So today I'm going to talk about scrolling animations with CSS scroll timeline. My name is Bramus, as already mentioned. I'm a developer from Belgium. I do front end, I do back end, I do some things in between. But nowadays my focus really is JavaScript, React 2. But then on the other hand, my love for CSS will never die. Progressive enhancement, HTML, CSS, those are the basics. I still grab to them very, very often. In my spare time, I like to go scuba diving, but I also run a blog. It's bram.us. You can find it at bram.us. You can also follow it on Twitter if you want. It's at bramusblog. And on there I collect links to interesting articles, interesting videos, some images that I like. I always spice them up like with a little opinion or an extra demo or stuff like that. But I also write my own posts on my blog, so I call these the original content. And two of those articles are these two here. These are about the future of CSS scrolling animations with scroll timeline. You can find the links there below. Now, you don't need to go visit them right now, the website, and read the articles, because everything that is written down into these posts forms the basis of this presentation. So I will talk you through everything, and later on you can grab back to it if you want. A big warning though, everything I'm about to tell you is still highly experimental. The scrolling animation specification, it's still in a draft, it's an editor's draft, so that means that there are breaking changes ahead. The spec can change at any time, it's not being formalized yet. And also it only has support in Chromium 89 Plus with the experimental web platform features flag enabled. So you can't use it right now. Well, you can if you enable the flag, but it's not supported in any other browser. Now that doesn't stop me from looking at it, because I don't see this big warning here. What I see is an exciting feature ahead, not an experimental one that can break, but a very, very exciting feature. Why is that? Well, these scroll-linked animations, they are hardware accelerated. They run off of the main thread, so on a compositor, and they don't require any JavaScript at all. And I think that's amazing. If you can't catch my excitement right here, well, let me show you a small demo. This is what's possible using scrolling animations with CSS. So this is pure HTML, CSS, no JavaScript at all. You might recognize it from CoverFlow from back in the day, from iTunes, where you had the album covers that flow by. I like it a lot. Don't worry about the code. I will talk you through it later on in this presentation. So, before we dive into our scrolling animations, let me just tell you the difference between scroll linked animations and scrolled triggered animations. Scrolling animations is the thing you see here on the left. And here I have a visualization of a scroll port. So you could imagine this as being a browser window. Then here I also have my scroll bar and my scroll thumb. And then using the arrows, I can fake a scroll, I can simulate a scroll. So if I want to scroll down, you can see the scroll thumb also move with that. And if I then scroll back up, the scroll thumb also moves back up. Now what's also attached here is this little red bar that you see moving along with the demo. That is the progress bar I made of myself, which is animated using scrolling animations. So if I scroll down and back up, you see that there is this direct link between the scroll position and the position inside of the animation. Here at the start, the animation is at 0%, and then here at the very end, so if I have scrolled 100% through the page, the animation is at 100%. Scrolling animations. This in contrast with the thing you see on the right, scroll triggered animations. These are animations that trigger once you reach a certain threshold. So you can scroll, but the animation won't run immediately. And once you reach a certain point, then the animation will run. A typical example is these fly-in animations here. Just look at the bottom. So if I scroll down, you can see these pieces of content move in. And now they move back out. So these are triggered at a certain point in time, and then the animations, they run all by themselves. There's no direct link between me scrolling. It's only the certain points that trigger the animation. So scroll linked animations, direct link to the scrolling. Scroll triggered animations, triggered when reaching a certain threshold, a certain point in your scroll position. So the specification, scrolling animation specification, the one that is still in draft, it only covers, well, it covers these scroll linked animations. And these are animations based on the scroll progress of the scroll container. An example I've already shown you, but now let's dig into the real code. So this is actually running in Chrome with the flag enabled. So if I scroll to the very bottom of the page, I also see the progress bar move from no width here at the start to full width at the bottom. The demo is on the code pen, so you can see here HTML and CSS. Only these two tabs are used, no JavaScript at all. Let me just focus the right screen. Yes. So what does the code look like? The CSS code look like? Well, it's this. It's only 19 lines of CSS code, but we can chop it up in three different parts if you want. The first part that we see, which is now highlighted, is a CSS animation. This is a regular CSS animation like we already know it. So we have a transform, we have our keyframes where it transform from scale x0 to scale x1. So that means scale x0 means squish the whole thing together, and then scale x1 is stretch it out to its full width. And this animation we apply to our progress bar here on line 17, we do that. So if I were only to include these lines onto my page in my CSS and would load the page, then the progress bar or the animation would run all by itself. Now we don't want that, we want to stop that, we want our scroll timeline to be used, so we also have to define that. How do we do that? Well, that's the second part we see here. It's the add scroll timeline add rule. So that's the keyword that you need to use, the add rule, add scroll timeline. And then the second part here, progress bar timeline, that's the name that you give it. So we give our scroll timeline a name of progress bar timeline, and then later on we can use it. We also have these three things here. These are the descriptors for the add rule. But we will also cover them later in this talk. Now, what's really interesting about this is that these are actually the default values. So I could even as well just omit them and only define the rule at line 10 with the curly bracket there and this curly bracket, and it would also work. So our first thing, the CSS animation. Our second thing, the scroll timeline. And then we need our third thing, and this is here the link between both, and that's the animation timeline property. It's a new CSS property. You can also use it in the shorthand for animation. And the value that you give it is the name of your scroll timeline. So we give it progress bar timeline, which was the name here of our scroll timeline. And the scroll timeline thingy, what is it? Well, what's the difference? A regular timeline is driven by the tick of a clock. So if I just sit here, the clock keeps on ticking without me doing anything. A scroll timeline, that's a type of timeline whose time point, whose time value is driven by the progress of scroll. So you can think of a little turn knob if you want. If you're at 0, it's not open, and then you turn the knob open, you go to 100%, and then you go back, and then you can keep on turning the knob. Well, that's the same with scroll. If you scroll up or down the page, if you scroll from the start to the bottom, you are turning the knob and moving the animation forwards or backwards. Again, scroll linked animations. So this is the code. Now let's dive into the descriptors. I'm showing 4 here, whereas in the code I only showed 3. Well, that's because the first one, the time range, this one has been removed from the specification. It was in there, but again, the specification is still in editor's draft. It's still being worked on, so it can change, and time range was removed from it. What it basically allowed you to do was to set, okay, how much time should advance if we turn our little knob? If we scroll from the top of the page to the very bottom of the page, how much animation time should also move along with that? This one has been scrapped because my best practice was to always set the time range to the exact same value as the animation duration, and the specification also does it now. So you no longer need to specify a time range. It will automatically take over the animation duration from the animation that you are linking to. Why am I mentioning this? Well, you will still see time range in the demos. That's because the implementation in Chromium, the one behind the flag, still requires the time range. It's lagging a bit behind on the specification. So if you see time range in there, simply ignore it in the demos. Scroll offsets. This is a nice one. So by default, we have our scrolling set from the start to the very, very bottom of the page. So if I scroll down, by then the animation should be done. But here we don't want that, because here in our page we have this background image which has a parallax effect set to it. So take a good look here at the lines, and if I scroll up, you can see that the stars, they move a bit faster. Now you want this animation not to run from 0, so from the top of the page to the bottom of the page. No, you want the animation to be finished by the time we reach 100 VH. So by the time we are at the bottom of the first screen of the cover. So what can we use there for? We can use the scroll offsets for that. So by the time I have 100 VH here, the animation is done. Now just if I can, I can't seem to hit the, one moment. I want to show you the CSS tab. Yes, this will be much better. Now let's jump forward to our actual demo. Here, scroll offsets. So I showed you this demo here. We start our animation at the top, and then we want it to be finished by the time we reach 100 VH, and for that we use our scroll offsets. So what does the CSS look like? We have our keyframes here. So we shift the background position of the cover, and then we set the scroll offsets to 0, so the starting offset, and then 100 VH, the end offset. And because we said that, the animation will be done by the time we have scrolled 100 VH instead of 100% of the entire page. Now what you also see here is start and end. These are old uses. In an older version of the specification, you had to define only start and end, but later on it got replaced by scroll offsets. So again, why do you see both in here? Well, this is the new syntax. Once Chrome Canary catches up with it, it will use this piece of code. This here is the old syntax to not break the demos. One cool thing about scroll offsets though is that with start and end you are limited to just one start and one end. With scroll offset you can have multiple values. So you can do something like scroll offset 0, 33 VH, 100 VH. That would also work. I like this addition. And then again, we have here the animation timeline where we link our parallax timeline to our animation, which is the parallax animation, which moves the background there. So yeah, this works. Cool. Then the next two descriptors that we have are the orientation and the source. The orientation allows you to define like, okay, which scroll direction are we looking at? By default, it's vertical, but sometimes you want to like look at the horizontal scroll offset. And then the source allows you to define which element that you're looking at, which scroll port that you are looking at, which you drive the animation. So by default, the source is like the entire page, but you don't always want that. An example here is these image galleries. So here I have an image gallery, and then if I slide horizontally, you can see the progress bar move. So this progress bar, it doesn't look at the scroll position of the entire page. It only looks at the scroll position of the gallery wrapper. And then here a bit further down in the code, I have another gallery. This one also moves independently of the one above. If I enable here show debug, you might see, you can see this green outline here. I don't know if it's entirely visible, but this is like the scroller that we are looking at. So this is the wrapper. The CSS code, what does it look like? So we have, let me scroll to the correct position here. So we have our scroll container. So there's a thing here highlighted in green, and we look at that. I use an add supports rule here to check for, okay, does the browser support animation timeline, yes or no? And then I inject the other code. So again, we have our progress keyframes, the same one as before, from scale x0 to scale x1. And then we have our scroll timeline. We have two scroll timelines, one for the first gallery and then the second one for the gallery further down in the page. And here we use our two new descriptors that I just mentioned. So the source, it says, okay, look at the div with ID gallery 1 scroll container. And then the second scroll timeline looks at another element. and then our orientation is set to inline. Inline is the logical value that you can use for there. So you have vertical and horizontal, but you can also use inline and block. And then you have, if you have an RTL page or something like that, it will automatically adapt itself to it. Yeah, one side note here is that to hook this, you have to use a selector function, and the selector function right now, it only accepts IDs. So that's why I have to duplicate the timeline, because if you check this timeline for the first gallery and the second timeline for the second gallery, they basically are the same. They are the same code. The only thing that differs from it is the ID that I pass into there. I've opened the bucket at the CSS working group for this. Like, hey, what if selector could accept like any selector, or for example, the ampersand to refer to the element itself, and then that way I could reuse my scroll timeline. Because right now I have 2 of them because I have 2 galleries. But imagine if I have a page with 5 galleries and I have to duplicate my code 5 times, which is a bit annoying. So these here are the descriptors. Yes. What can we do with it? Well, here's an example. This is a parallax cover, so the whole page is covered, but it transforms into a sticky header. So take a good look at the background and take a good look at the color too of the background and the font size. So if I scroll down the page, you can see that the cover is shrinking. And once I reach this point right here, it becomes sticky. And then I can scroll through the content. So again, just CSS, no JavaScript here. It all goes automatically up. And then if I scroll back up, it does the same in reverse. Yeah. So again, the CSS here, it scrolls to the page. It has scroll offset set from 0 to 90 VH because the left header is about 10 VH high. And then the end animation, let me look if I find it. Well, it should say sticky in here somewhere. To background position, background color here. This one fix. Oh yes, I used a little trick there. I won't go into details here, but the clue is that, yeah, this is possible using only CSS. Pretty amazing. Another example that I want to show you is this parallax effect, where you have several layers of the page move. So this is from a game called Firewatch from the Mac. It's a few years old, but if you scroll, you can see that the frontmost layer, it moves a lot, but then the back layers, like, they kind of stay in place, and you can achieve this fake 3D, this fake depth effect. Every layer, they look at the same scroll offsetting, so scrolling from 0 to 100 VH, but then each layer itself, so they are stacked onto each other, each layer itself moves for a different distance. You can check the code yourself if you want. So I'm going to share the slides afterwards, no worries there. All the demos are on CodeBen, you can check the CSS code, so yeah, you can find everything afterwards. So is this the end of this presentation? Well, no, it's not the end of this presentation because we still have a little bit of time. Because the specification not only allows you to link a scroll an animation to a scroll position, it also allows you to link an animation based to the position of an element inside of a scroller. Just take a good look here on the left. You see this red box? Now it's not intersecting, and from the time it's intersecting, it will switch to green. So if I move down, now scroll down, now it's intersecting, and now it's no longer intersecting. If I scroll up again, it will be intersecting, and now it's not. So this would be something that you typically do using intersection observer, but nowadays you can do that using only CSS. So you can take a look at the red box there and say, hey, while the red box is green, then I want to run an animation. So I can like move the box or scale the box or even move another element. That's also possible. So an example here is an image reveal. So if I scroll down this page, you will see that this image is being revealed all by itself. So from the time, let me enable debug. So the green line indicates its top edge. So from the time it touches the bottom edge of the scroll port, it will start the animation, and then by the time it goes out of the scroll port, the animation will be done. You can tweak the offsets, and we will dive into the code further on in the talk. So in pseudocode, what does it look like? Well, we want our scroll offsets to be something like this, like, hey, start the animation when the box is at the bottom here of the scroll port, when it's sitting against it, and then stop the animation when it's above the top edge of the scroll port. So here, touching the bottom edge, and then now at the top, it's above the top edge. So we want our animation to run in between there. How can we do that in CSS? Well, in CSS, we will be able to do that using an element offset. An element offset, it looks like this. It consists of 3 parts. First thing is the target. The target says like, hey, which element am I looking at? Inside of the scroller, which element do I need to take a look at? Again, it uses the selector function and then the ID. So we have a box named target. You can see it here on the left. Then the second thing that we define is the edge. It's either end or start. End means it's at the bottom of the scroll port, and then start means it's at the top of the scroll port. Now, why isn't this top and bottom? Well, end and start, it also adapts itself automatically when you have horizontal scroll containers. Because in a horizontal scroll container, then start means the left edge, and then end means the right edge. And then the third thing that we can define, this is the threshold. It's a number. It goes from 0 to 1. 0 means it's the targeted element is not intersecting at all with the scroll port. And if it's 1, it means it's entirely intersecting. So it also interpolates in between. So 0.5, it means it's half intersecting. It's half inside of the scroll port and half outside of the scroll port. And of course, yeah, we can adjust this if we want, and we can do some combinations. So where we want our animation to run, like remember the green box, the red box that turned into a green box. You want our animation to start when the element itself is sitting at the end edge, the bottom edge outside of it, not intersecting, and you want it to be finished by the time it's at the start edge again, not intersecting. And we can do some combinations with that. So if you have from end 0 to start 0, that's the one I already showed you, the animation will start here and then it will stop by the time the box is over there. You can tweak it. Say you have end 0 and start 1. That will mean, well, our animation will it will begin running when it's here at end 0, and then it will be finished by the time the box itself, the target element, hits the top of the scroll port. Some other cool combinations is, okay, end 1, start 1 is when it's in between the entire scroll port. But if you have start 1, start 0, that means at the start edge entirely intersecting to not intersecting. So here you can create an animation for an element that slides out of the scroll port. You can do the same with the end edge. You can create an animation for an element that slides into the scroll port. I think that's really cool. So an example again is the revealing image. So our keyframes use a clip pad to clip the image and then at the end no longer clip it. So it has a reveal effect. We also change the opacity from 0 to 1. And then it will start running when it's at this element will start running when it's at the bottom edge. 0.5 means it's halfway intersecting into the scroll port. So here it's already inside of the scroll port, but now you can see it's starting to appear. And by the time it's entirely into the scroll port, it has finished. So yeah, I like this effect. Kind of cool. And I have duplicated it for a second image on there, which also runs. That's a nice use case. Another use case is a sliding contact list. So if you have a list with a lot of contacts, take a good look here at the bottom. So if I scroll up, you can see that the new contacts, they are sliding in. Again, how does it work? Well, we have our scroll offset set to end 0 and then end 1. End 0 means at the bottom edge outside of it. To end 1 means bottom edge inside of the scroll port. And I have created a scroll timeline for each and every list item that we see there. Now, I didn't do this manually, of course. I used a little bit of JavaScript to generate the CSS for me. And then I pasted that CSS into my CSS tab here on CodePen. So this is the slide in contact list. Now also, since you can attach multiple CSS animations to one and the same element, what's stopping us from not only creating here at the bottom a slide in animation, but at the top, take a good look, a slide out animation. So that's also possible using only CSS. So we have two animations set, an appearing animation and a disappearing animation. with different timelines for each one for the bottom edge sliding in and one for the top edge sliding out. Again, HTML, CSS, and then the JavaScript tab that you see here. This was the little snippet that I used to generate the CSS that was needed for the code. So I just let this function run, and then I copy it. I run generate CSS, and I copy the CSS into the CSS tab. Kind of like this, a very native feel to this page. Yeah, cool. Another demo, we're nearly there with the demos, is a horizontal scroll section. So if I scroll down the page, you will see this horizontal strip move by. So take a good look. I'm just scrolling horizontally. So I'm scrolling vertically, pardon me. I'm scrolling down the page, but now, oh, it's not moving. It's broken. Oh, should have checked my demos. That's a shame. Oh, you should see it move. I think perhaps here scroll offset start end. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, oh, that's just, oh, now it's moving. Did you see that? That's pretty weird. Something weird went on. So here we have our horizontal scroll section. I scroll down the page and then the strip moves horizontally and then it's done. The key part here is that the section pin, I've stretched it out. So that's the enclosing element. I've given it like 500 VH of height. And then inside of it, you have the pin wrap, and that element is being translated as the section pin scrolls over the page. The bug that you just saw there, well, yeah, it's still experimental implementation, so that kind of explains it all. You can also see a small glitch here when backing up. I don't know if it's visible in the stream, but like my screen glitches here. Again, it's a bug. It's being filed. It's being worked on, so no worries there. And then the one of the last demos that I'm about to show you, I've already shown you, is this cover flow demo where the covers, they move as you scroll horizontally. If I enable debug, you might see how it works. So the green box is an unordered list. The blue things are the cards, and then inside of the cards are the images. And I'm looking at the position of the cards themselves, of the blue boxes, and then I am moving the image, which sits, difficult to pronounce, which sits inside of the list item. I move the image itself forward and translate the image without touching the list item. Kind of cool. Again, there's a bug here in the implementation. So at the very start, even though our card is here halfway into the scroll port, our animation is at 0% instead of 50%. A bug has been filed. Let's hope they get it fixed before it gets shipped. And then the final demo I want to show you is this stacking cards thing. So here I have a regular position sticky that already works in all browsers, but what also happens here is this little depth effect. So if I scroll through the page, the cards, the old cards, they get pushed to the back, and this is where the scroll timeline kicks into action. There's a little trickery going on here, but what is the clue to everything is that I have given every card a different index. So card 1 has index 1, of course, and card 2 has index 2. And then I use that index to set where is it here? An animation delay. I don't know it. Oh, here. I tweak the duration and I tweak the delay of each and every element it's being applied on using that index. Kind of like it. That took me a long time to make this demo, but I'm glad it worked out. So is this the end of this presentation? Yes, one quick thing though, before we continue. There are browser bugs filed. If you can actively start these, you can signal to browser vendors like, hey, we really want this feature to happen. So you can follow along there if you want. And also build demos. If you don't have any inspiration for scroll timeline, just go to CodePen and type in scroll trigger. That's a JavaScript way of doing these kind of things. Fork a demo and try to reproduce it using only CSS scroll timeline. You can have some great nice things with that. So yes, this here is the end of this presentation. I want to thank you for your attention.